Alright, so first of all, how's the audio? Before we go any further. I have no way of telling how the audio is. Turn that down a little bit more so you don't hear the speaker there. Yes, the beer, or no, excuse me, the beer is beer. Lavos was in the intro, didn't you see it? Okay, so Chrono Trigger. For those of you who've never heard of this game is terrible. It's the worst game ever. No, seriously though. Okay, turn down the game a little bit. You got it. We'll turn it back down. I turned it up a little bit because just to test, and so now it's back down. Uh, oh, it's gonna do that intro again. Let's go and just pause this for a second while we sit here. Chrono Trigger is an unusual game for many different reasons. Uh, Chrono Trigger was one of those rare confluences, one of the rare instances where basically everything went right, even though it didn't really mean to, if you know what I mean. It just kind of happened. All of a sudden, two of the biggest RPG companies in the West and the East both got together. These people already coordinated with each other and like, you know what? Let's make a game. And I know I am exaggerating, of course. There's actually a decent amount of paperwork and bureaucracy and corporate garbage that went into this, but it was actually I'm actually also de-emphasizing. It was actually a confluence of basically four separate groups of people. Several of the people who had worked on, or excuse me, three groups of people: Nintendo, Square, Soft, and Enix, and or Enix, depending on how you prefer that. The and all these people, like I've mentioned before, they all kind of already knew each other. They all kind of already interacted with each other. No, yes, Chatter, absolutely. If she chose it, though, she would let her choose. Um, and so the other weird thing is everyone involved was at a point in time at which it was basically the cusp of the SNES's era when Chrono Trigger was coming out. Now I know SNES games continued to come out for a while after this, and it's broken, Roaring Middleman. And so SNES games continued to come out after this point in time, and there are more advanced SNES games than this. It has been argued actually that Terranigma is actually the most advanced SNES game out there. Shrug. But the point is, this is when people had really started pushing the envelope. If you don't know what I mean by this, compare and contrast Super Mario World, back when the SNES was new, to Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island, it's the same system, and with a couple of exceptions, the hardware hasn't really changed, but they figured out how to use what they had more. If you look at virtually every console up until and including, I'd say at least the PS2, you see this same pattern during the early time of the game. They were still getting used to the hardware and what it could do, and by the end, they'd figured it out and could do some really awesome stuff with it. Another good example of this is to compare FF7 versus FF9, again, both on the PS1. But FF4 to FF6 is another good comparison, again, the SNES. So by Chrono Trigger's time, they'd already figured out how to do a lot of things, and they decided rather than emphasizing trying to do really fantastic, amazing graphical things like certain other SNES games do, they decided to go for really pushing the envelope as far as what the SNES could do. And they kind of came up with this weird half-action, half-turn-based RPG thing that at the time was pretty innovative. Again, not the first of its type, but probably the codifier. For all intents and purposes, several of the team that had worked on Secret of Mana and the earlier Mana game back on the Game Boy had also put in some work on this game, and they were the ones who kind of helped get together a lot of that code with regards to working around, interacting with each other, monster triggers on the overworld, the very concept of the way the movement code works and the dash button. This may all sound like simple stuff nowadays, but this was stuff that they were still working out in this particular era, an era in which most RPGs, and especially JRPGs, were tile-based, like the game I just finished, Final Fantasy VI. I do not mean to disparage Final Fantasy VI, but this was the kind of thing where it was like, huh? Now, excuse me. So the hardware side of thing, the experience was there, the heart was there, the team was there, and by some weird happenstance, Chrono Trigger basically came out in what is often considered the first golden era of JRPGs in the West, and I want to stress that. I don't know how much this is true around the rest of the world. Now, let me explain what I mean by that a little bit. I say the first golden era. That's actually kind of important because you might be like, well, what about all the games before this? Well, like I said, this is 1995 or 1994, I believe, is when this was first came out in Japanese. But anyways, 1995, right? JRPGs had finally kind of started exploding here in the West. Final Fantasy 2 had come out, aka 4, and Final Fantasy 3 had just blown everyone away. And by everyone, I mean only people who are actually interested in this kind of thing to begin with. Now, that's kind of the thing. That's why I call this the first. FF7 was the real explosion of the popularity of the JRPG in the West, and it's one of the reasons why FF7 has been so heavily emulated by basically every single other game that's ever come out ever. But Chrono Trigger came out on the tail end of FF6, when a lot of people, myself included, had basically really started to get into the swing of JRPGs. In other words, well, I can say FF1 was my first JRPG, or Dragon Quest. I really don't remember. So, I could say that back on the NES. As I've said before, FF4 on the SNES was the first one I really enjoyed, and FF6 was the first one that really captivated me. In other words, Chrono Trigger came out right when a lot of people in my position, who had either started with the NES ones or started with the SNES ones, were like, and were perfectly poised for this game to be amazing and to basically sell us on the genre forever. I mention this because I feel like this is one of the two big reasons why Chrono Trigger has sustained itself year after year after year. To this day, you bring up the game Chrono Trigger, and even people who generally don't care for JRPGs or RPGs in general will at least nod, know what you're talking about, are aware of it. It has hit popular culture, and a huge number of gamers will at the very least consider it a good game. A surprising number of those gamers tend to consider this the best game of all time. In all actual fact, I believe I'm one of the weirdos who tends to put 6 prior to Chrono Trigger, although we'll see if that stands up in a full review format. Second reason I believe Chrono Trigger really hits the mark is a little harder to describe. Chrono Trigger is a relatively short game for a JRPG, easily half the length of FF6, to use a direct example. Even if you do everything and take your time, this is about an 18-hour game. That is, of course, the original SNES version. The DS version is a little bit longer because it has additional content. And that's one of the reasons we'll be playing the DS version, by the way, especially for the new translation, which is phenomenal, by the way. But it's a relatively short game. It has a lot of variety to it. It tried a lot of new things. It tried to really push the envelope, as I already mentioned, not just with regards to a SNES game, but the very concept of storytelling and all that fun stuff. They did a lot of new stuff with Chrono Trigger. But it also... I'm trying to think how best to explain this. Chrono Trigger got lucky. I think that's the best way to explain it. Chrono Trigger got damned lucky. If Chrono Trigger had bombed, if this had been... the Mega Man X7 of JRPGs. I don't I don't have a better example off the top of my head. If this had just been a terrible game and things just had not worked out, I imagine people would not remember this nearly as fondly or nostalgically as they do to this day. But it got lucky. It had amazing composers, amazing graphics, amazing writing, amazing stylizing, amazing coding, amazing variety, amazing thematic focus. One of the weird things about Chrono Trigger, one of the weirdest things about Chrono Trigger is that the story is very, very tightly focused. It has been argued as to whether or not it has a stronger focus on character or plot. I personally think it has a stronger focus on plot, for reasons I will discuss when we go through the review. But it has everything in the entire game cycles around the same idea. No matter what you're doing, even if you're doing a side quest, you are still connected to that primary theme of Chrono Trigger. You never lose sight of that goal. So even a player who isn't that invested tends to be reminded of what they're fighting for. And as Samurai points out, it is an extremely accessible game. It is easy for basically anyone to pick up Chrono Trigger. As I've talked about before, Chrono Trigger is, I'd say, maybe the 4th best difficulty curve designed game, that's a bad sentence, that I've ever encountered as far as RPGs go. Maybe there's others that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but if you, as long as you're just going through the game normally, you will be at the level you need to be for the area you're at. As long as you don't run from every battle, as long as you, and you don't have to go out of way to fight everything. I remember my friend Eric used to go through this game, and he was like, "Hey, I need to be level 80 to defeat Lavos." And I always remember that being odd because, in all actuality, you basically have to be about level 45-ish to beat Lavos. However, Lavos will be a challenge at that point, but that's my point. The difficulty curve is designed so that if you don't have to go out of the way to grind or run, you're at the level for things to be relatively challenging. How many of you out there got to several bosses in this game, go ahead and raise your hand, and were like, oh man, this is really hard, and yet it was never frustrating? Now, this is my perspective, but I could name a couple of. The Gollum twins are a good example. When you first encounter Magus in the castle is a good example. When you have to actually use specific thought process, strategy, etc. to get through these. What's another good example of a difficulty but not frustrating fight? When I first encountered the Black Chrono, that's another good example of that for me personally. I would say Lavos himself is also a good example of that. Lavos is actually a little bit rougher than some people tend to remember, probably because of New Game Plus. Oh, that reminds me. Chrono Trigger invented New Game Plus. Now, okay, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, no, Arsh, you're wrong, and you're stupid, and I hate you, and stop scratching your ear like you're doing right now. Chrono Trigger gave us the term New Game Plus. From now on, virtually every game that has this feature either actually calls it New Game Plus in the game, or the players call it New Game Plus because that's what it is. Because this game codified that term for us. I cannot overemphasize how important New Game Plus is to the longevity and fun of a game, especially an RPG. I have argued time and time and time and time again on the importance and the value and the usage and why virtually every game out there should have New Game Plus as an option. I've even had people say, well, I don't understand it, maybe you can explain it to me. I had a forum post about that, about someone who was like, I don't understand the appeal of New Game Plus, and I put out a paragraph or two saying, here's me trying to explain it, right? And but I could, it breathed life into the game, but it also explains one other thing. Remember how I mentioned this is a short game? Well, it's only short once through. And be honest, how many of you guys out there only played through this game once and have never New Game Plused it? I will not be raising my hand here because, God almighty, I have New Game Plused the snot out of this game. Rather infamously, getting a little personal here, when I first moved out, after the whole college thing to live on my own, I was having a bit of a emotional / mental breakdown. I was scared. We've all been through that, right? Or at least those of you who've already done that particular point in your life. You get out there, you're on your own. You have to make the job and make the rent and bills and all those adult things for the first time, right? So I was scared. I admit it. I'm not ashamed to admit that. So I sat down. I've told this story before to some extent or another. I sat down and played Chrono Trigger basically for about a week. Solid. I didn't go to sleep for that week. I just kept playing Chrono Trigger. I just New Game Plus and New Game Plus and New Game Plus and New Game Plus. And I know this is going to sound pathetic, but you could go ahead and laugh at me all you want, because it helped me to kind of get my focus and get myself reined in and being like, okay, you know what? I think I can actually do this, and then I went out and dealt with all that fun stuff. So yeah, I love the New Game Plus feature in this. I can replay FF6 ad nauseum, and indeed I have replayed FF6 ad nauseum. I just played FF6 over the last few days with you guys, right? But Chrono Trigger is more fun to replay. So because it has New Game Plus. So before we even start the game, we're automatically going to give 2 pluses to gameplay for the New Game Plus. First and foremost, actually, you know what? Actually, I'm going to say 3 pluses. Let me explain all 3 pluses, okay? The first plus is obvious. New Game Plus is a feature, okay? That's it. There you go. New Game Plus is a feature, so that's a plus. Second reason, the fact that it adds so much variety to the gameplay. gives you new ways to play through the game. There's actually certain things you can see slightly differently in a new Game Plus than you would a normal Game Plus, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the second plus. The third plus is the fact that it added something to the industry as a whole. Chrono Trigger actually threw out the New Game Plus thing and made it popular, and is one of the, it is, at least, I'm sorry, I should state in my opinion, is one of the reasons why so many other games out there, not enough, but some of them, have implemented a New Game Plus feature. The Tales of are a good example of this. Final Fantasy X-2, a game I honestly argue I would not have enjoyed nearly as much if not for the fact that it has a New Game Plus feature. And hell, even the Diablos to an extent, especially Diablo 3, basically has an ultimate version of New Game Plus that you can play through it, and so forth and so on. I've given my thoughts on this before. So again, before we even start the game, now I am reviewing specifically the DS version. You might be like, well, why? I think Chrono Trigger needs all the help it can get in order to defeat FF6, and that's why. Um, yeah, Dark Souls, there's another great example. Dark Souls and its New Game Plus. That's another excellent example of a game. And again, not quite an RPG. I mean, I know Dark Souls is kind of an RPG, but you get my point. You don't have to be an RPG to have New Game Plus or have that feature. Hey, Samurai Jack, what's up? I have Samurai and Samurai Jack in the chat at the same time. Now, I had one other thing I wanted to share. Oh, that's right. Chrono Trigger is like I said, it has achieved a great deal of popularity. It is the TNG of JRPGs. If you don't know what I mean by that, most people think that Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, is the superior Star Trek show. Some people think it's the original series. Some people think it's the Next Generation. I've never actually heard an argument for Enterprise or Voyager, to be honest with you. But, you know, of all those shows, the one that everyone knows is TNG. The Next Generation hit popularity. It hit popular culture, not just science fiction fan culture, not just television fan culture, not even just Star Trek fan culture, but all of popular culture. So if you mention Picard, if you mention Data, there's a decent chance that some random person on the street knows what you're talking about. Probably the best example of this, I think, is actually Star Wars. And I hate to say that, but I mean, if you think about, you know, there are people out there who you could mention Darth Vader or Yoda to, and they have an idea who you're talking about, even if they've never seen the films. Even if they have no exposure to the Star Wars films, they know who Darth Vader is because it's popular, right? Chrono Trigger is effectively the same equivalent for the JRPG market. While most people probably have heard of Final Fantasy, they have just heard of the franchise. However, a lot of people have also heard of Chrono Trigger, and again have some idea of Chrono and time travel and, you know, action RPG and the big creature who they may or may not know the name of. But I've encountered people who've never played this game who know the name Lavos. They've heard of this game, in other words. And again, that goes back to that unique appeal, that accessibility that the game managed. Now, I want to say one last thing before I finally hit start here. I swear I'll get off the title screen. Okay, I swear. The last thing I wanted to talk about is I've been told before that I've been blasted before by seemingly having contradictory opinions. Let me give you a direct example of what I'm talking about. First of all, hey Chaos Rider, what's up, man? Hope you enjoy some Chrono Trigger awesomeness. Oh, hey Mind Blast, what's up? Welcome to my stream. And so yeah, thank you for proving my point. I was actually going to name a few people I know in real life, like Blaine, for example, who has never played Chrono Trigger, but he knows about it. Anyways, so where was I? World of Warcraft. Okay, you ready for this? World of Warcraft, in my opinion, one of the reasons it succeeds so well and has succeeded so long is, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons for this, but one of the biggest reasons, in my opinion, is it appeals to a large variety of markets simultaneously. Now, here's the thing. I have also gone on record as saying that certain other things have, I'm not going to name names here, have failed because they tried too much to reach for broad appeal rather than sticking to their niche. Now, those two statements do seem contradictory. The difference comes down to execution. A game that has broad appeal can still be great as long as you put that much more effort and time into each aspect of it. In other words, the people who, and I know people are going to disagree with this, but, you know, whatever. the gentlemen who the men and women who made World of Warcraft sat down and really put a lot of effort into each of the aspects of the game so that each of those aspects had appeal to the particular market that they were appealing to. You with me? You make sense? In other words, they didn't just make it broad appeal and then moved on and went home and got lunch. They were like, I'm going to make this specific section really good, and I'm going to make this specific. Now, all of this relates to Chrono Trigger because they did the same damn thing. Chrono Trigger does have broad appeal, but it is not spread thin. It is not something that you can't enjoy because a lot of effort was put into making each and every single aspect of the game well executed, well designed, well programmed, well presented. So that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why Chrono Trigger has such a lasting impact. Now, so yeah, like I said, we're going to go through the DS version. We will see if the DS version, specifically of Chrono Trigger, is better than the SNES version of FF6. And I amuse myself here because I imagine if they ever actually do the proper 3D awesome version of FF6, that will blow Chrono Trigger out of the water. However, that's not what we're doing today. We are doing this game. So yeah, we actually have a few options here. I can actually control this with the mouse in place of the stylus, basically. We're going to be going with, hang on. Is this what I want? Yeah, we're going to go with this option. We want wait mode. We're going to leave movies on. Hang on, do I want... Leaves the upper screen uncluttered, and this is... Okay, yeah, so this is the version I want here. And I can still use the controller for this. By the way, another thing they did well with the CT DS version specifically, there's actually a lot of options, and they give you a lot of variety in how you want to play the game. And that's a good thing. That's it. The end. Moving on. Now, one other admission that I have to get out there right off the bat. I'm probably going to be stoned and knived and bare-skinned and otherwise burnt to death for this, but I don't actually care for the Dragon Ball series that much. And I'm not a huge fan of Toriyama's style. Now, before you skin me alive, I do think he does certain types of things very well, and I do think his style fits in gameplay quite well. I can give you several examples of this. The entire Dragon Quest series. That's the only example I ever need to give you. Seriously, go look up screenshots or whatever of Dragon Quest VIII sometime. Video is even better. If you can see Dragon Quest VIII in motion, tell me that Toriyama's style does not perfectly suit that kind of cel-shaded RPG, 3D RPG like that. Because it looks great. And he does some good stuff elsewhere, too, which, again, I don't want to get into too much. Well, that remains to be seen, Samurai. I admittedly was not counting in the GBA version of stuff in my total previously. I probably should have. Anyways, no, not the abridged version. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Toriyama. I just like Toriyama's style, kind of, under certain circumstances. And again, I think it fits video games rather well. Now, that being said, I also have to add, I feel like one of the things Chrono Trigger did best was that the sprites are designed to be based off of Toriyama's artwork, but the sprites themselves were still designed by the people at Squaresoft and Squaresoft who already knew sprite work, who were already excellent sprite designers. So the sprite design in in Chrono Trigger is fantastic, is what I'm trying to say here. But I mention this because most of the movies, the little anime movies in this game, the ones that happened in the PlayStation version, I don't actually care for. But that's interesting because when I think about it, I do actually like the intro movie, the one that we played right at the beginning there. I feel like that was very well done and very well executed and had a lot of obvious good quality on top of it and was enjoyable to watch. I don't care for most of the other ones. The one where Magus is revealed, the one where they uses the Masamune or the Masamune or the Masmune, depending on how you prefer that. I don't care for, again, like I said, most of them. So, shrug. Brother Box, you are literally about 5 minutes too late for me to answer your question. So, Chrono. Well, guys, I think we all know exactly, and some of you who were here on my stream about a month ago understand this here. At least I hope you understand this. Because I personally think there's only one name that Chrono could have. Now, fun fact, in the DS version, they actually made it so they have a little bit more room for the text. They actually basically rewrote a lot of the code for this game. There we go. Pretty much from the bottom. There we go. So a lot of this, even though it looks effectively like the same game, program-wise, under the hood, as I like to call it, under the hood, they improved a lot of this game. No, I don't, Samurai. And hi, Kimmick. And hi, Foo Dogs, by the way. And hello to the Geek, and hello to everyone else I have not yet said hello to yet. You all remain awesome. Now, this is funny. Just about every Final Fantasy, hell, every Squaresoft game out there starts in medias res. I talked about this back in FF6. The really funny thing about Chrono Trigger is it also starts in medias res. You just don't know it. I'll talk about that in just a second, because I want to point out one other really funny thing. So, right off the bat, it's like, hey, there's a Millennial Fair, blah, blah, blah. Now, I want you to... I'm emulating, Kimmick. I want you to pay attention to this line right here. Well, you'd better not let that get you into any trouble. I want you to behave yourself today. Okay? You see that line? Most people probably just skipped right over that line. It's just, I mean, because there's nothing significant about it, right? Except there is, isn't there? And anybody who's played this game knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to keep quiet about it, actually, until we get to that section. So just keep that in the back of your mind there. All right, let's set up a few settings here really quick. They added some tutorials for the DS version. That doesn't bother me too much. One of the things they actually went into as a goal with the DS version was to add, like, make it so that people who never played the game before could enjoy it. So, like I said, they added a few things of here's how the game works, yada yada yada. Oops, here we go. Okay. I want full memory. I want status bars. I think I want a don't need help messages, except I can't be changing that, so whatever. That needs to be on. That needs to be there. Yep. Auto on run. That's good for that. I'm not going to mess with that. There's no need. They actually allow you shortcuts in order to specifically set up, like if you want to automatically go from the overworld or from the game straight to whatever it is you want to look at. You can just set up shortcuts, and that's actually a really neat feature in my opinion. And this is a tutorial I cannot skip. Come on. Excuse me. Whew. Okay. I forget, Chatter. I remember we called her Ellie. I don't know, Growing Metalman, like 30? There's quite a few. Okay, so let's go back to this. Movies are on. They added some interesting little things here. We could go with the classic blue, based on the old FFs. We could go with the classic gray, which is the Chrono Trigger classic. Green I actually rather like. I like the brown too. You can't customize this like you can in, say, the FF series, but you can at least set it to different stuff. So I think we'll go with green for right now. I rather like green. Wait, I meant to hit. Yes. There we go. Make sure everything else is set up properly. That's on. That's on. That's okay. We're good. Okay. Absolutely not, Chatter. Nor would she join them. Now, just to demonstrate, you can't see it, of course, but you can also control the character with the mouse like this. You can actually play this entire game with the stylus, basically. If you hold the stylus just a little bit, you'll walk. If you hold it far to the distance, like this, you'll run. It looks kind of weird, and actually this is kind of weird on a mouse, but on the stylus, on the actual DS, this is surprisingly intuitive. So if you ever don't feel like playing it with the controller, you can play the whole game with the stylus. I'm going to go and give I have a feeling this is going to overwhelm in gameplay over FF6, which it should. 2 more pluses to the gameplay. One is basically for... Whoops. Are we still... There we go. Okay. One is for the DS-only options that they added, like the ability to go, hey, I want to look at my equipment. Bamf. Just like that. The shortcuts menu. And the UE in general. The UE in general is phenomenal. It looks tight, it looks crisp, it is informative. Even on this screen, just walking around, I can see my HP and MP immediately, just like that. I can see the map of where I am. I can shortcut straight to where I want to go. If I go in here, I can see where I am, my gold, my time. If I go in here, I see all of my stats up there, very clear, very obvious what the stats are. Obviously I don't have any new equipment, but if I try to switch these around, it'll tell me exactly what the new stats are and exactly how that works. I have no items at the moment, but that's awesome. It'll tell me when I get a new tech. Right there, I'll get Cyclone and 5 more TP. And it tells me exactly what they do. Even though I don't have it yet, it'll still tell me whirls around, striking your enemies nearby. Oh god, that's gonna be another one. It's got, and so forth and so on. You can change party members around once that's an option. Again, the UE in Chrono Trigger is just phenomenal. Sorry, but it just gets a plus, like I said, right off the bat. So let's name Luca. Luca Blight, maybe? No. Oh yeah, by the way, I know that Chrono Trigger is one of the more differently pronounced games out there. In other words, I've heard more people pronounce the names differently in this game than any other of the games I tend to talk about frequently. So I'm going to be using my pronunciations. So it may sound weird to you every now and again. Just a heads up. Chrono, Luca, Marl, Frog or Glenn. Isla is how I call her. Robo is obvious. Magus, even though I probably should be calling him Magus, but then nobody knows what I'm talking about. Hello, Sophis. And I think that's everyone. Yeah, I think that's everyone. So those are the names that I use, Lavos, etc., Azala. You'll hear me say them throughout this. Those are my pronunciations, the shrug. So, since we're going with a theme here, I'm Arsh, this is Luca. My best friend who is awesome. That is true, Samurai. Although I've heard people pronounce it Glenn differently, which is kind of weird. So let's call you... no, absolutely not, Cheddar. I'd rather die 1,000 deaths. Great, I believe you, Sophis. Actually, you know what? Screw it. We'll just default everyone else. Luca is female. I'm so used to holding down B to dash that I'm accidentally walking because I have auto dash on. So, like I said, this is really, really funny. The game starts en medias res, and you don't realize it. It feels more like a Dragon Quest game in its intro, but it is actually a true hybrid of a Dragon Quest and a Final Fantasy intro. This is another cool thing that some people don't even realize. I'm 3 seconds into the game. I can walk all the way over to the other continent. Go across here, explore a bit. Chrono Trigger, just like FF6, and indeed several of the other good FFs, really goes out of its way to disguise the linearity of it. And Chrono Trigger honestly probably does it a little bit better by allowing you to literally go around and having all these little optional places you can be like, hey, what's in here, and what's in here, and you can talk to this NPC or that NPC. A lot of the NPCs in this game change what they say based on when you talk to them, We get a little bit of lore here. We're already learning about Fiona and the forest. We've already learned that there's such a thing as monsters in the world who can aggro people. And, there's the... let's play a sad one. This is actually among my favorite songs in this game. But yeah, no random encounters of any kind in the overworld, ever. However, there are random encounters in the middle world, for lack of a better term. If you don't understand what I mean by that, Chrono Trigger kind of breaks convention by having the overworld basically just be a method of getting from point A to point B, and again with that fake exploration thing, whereas the middle world which is basically the dungeons or the towns or whatever. Like this area right here, this is a middle world zone right here. When the graphics are like this, I'd say it's the equivalent of Dungeons and Towns in an FF game, but it's a little bit different from that. So that's where you actually can get encounters. But again, no random encounters, period. So I'm going to go ahead and be adding some more gameplay pluses here. And one story plus. The game gets one story plus for the en medias res and yet not thing, which I haven't even finished describing yet, and a gameplay plus for the way they deal with the encounter system. Now I'm going to go and explain the encounter system for anybody who's never played this game or doesn't understand it. Like I said, 0 random encounters. There is no such thing as a random encounter back in Chrono Trigger. And the only way to get an encounter is to have a scripted trigger event happen, to walk over a particular tile, which is basically we're just going to start referring to as encounter tiles, or to directly interact with something, like to walk up to something and hit A, basically, which then triggers an encounter. Those are the only 3 methods to get encounters in this game. That even goes for bosses and whatnot. So I can walk around until the cows come home, and as long as I know where I'm walking and know what I'm doing, I will not get encounters. I am in charge of that encounter. Now, that being said, there are certain encounters in this game, and there's a list somewhere which I used to have when I was doing my tasks for this game on the SNES, that you cannot dodge whatsoever. And of those, there are certain ones you cannot run from whatsoever. So there are a few encounters that are required, for lack of a better term. And I agree, we're going to add a couple of other bonuses here. The music and sound, again, this is the DS version specifically, so the movie and the intro gets 1 for both of these. The graphics are going to get a 1. I'm going to describe that in a second. I haven't actually described that yet, but we're going to describe why the graphics get a bonus in a second. And the music for the town and the overworld both, and it just... the music really gets across the significance of where and what it is. So even I'm not even going... This is just a plus to the music for the way the music fits the scene. You follow me? In other words... Whoops, didn't mean to do that. In other words, this song sounds like the song a town would have. You know, it is invocative of that. Invocation. Yeah, that's right. This sounds like you traveling over some distant land in the overworld, and it gets that explorative, not quite lost, but, you know, the wild green fields feeling to it. And then, of course, you know, we got back to the town song, but then there's one other song I want to point out, which also is very evocative of the scene, the Millennial Fair, which, again, sounds like a song that would be playing for that section. Side note, I really like that they added the mini-map at the bottom of the screen. Most areas, it's not filled in. Only in, like, towns and whatnot is it filled in. However, it is really, really cool, in my opinion, that they did it. It's just a neat little feature. Shrug. Now, I mentioned graphics. I can't actually give you my favorite example until we get to the past, 680, but I can kind of give you an example here. Just like in FF6, and again, remember, this is mostly the same people working in this, so this makes sense. The sprite work's phenomenal. The food on the plate there actually looks like food. You can see the little things of beer. You can see the fork and the knife and the table, and it looks like there's this couch here, and the piano actually looks like a piano immediately. And there's the mirror, and there's the plaque, and the lamps, and the light, which is hitting certain areas around the area. And because they did this 2-tile system, everything looks slightly larger than it would in a standard FF game, so they had more room to flesh out chunks of the tile set. Now, if you don't know what I mean by that, in FF6 and 5 and 4, it's a 1-tile system. In other words, the smallest unit of currency when it comes to doing the graphics, for all intents and purposes, is 1 tile. However, you can see right here, just looking at Chrono, and if you can kind of match it up against the background there, he is clearly 2 tiles tall. In fact, he's actually 2 tiles and a little bit of change tall. And this chair is 2 tiles tall, and the couch is 2 tiles tall, and so forth and so on. You get my point. So in other words, they basically stretched the whole game out, graphically speaking, to be larger, and that gave them more to do. You can actually see the dishes up there, and the little piles of tomatoes and onions, and there's a plate of potatoes there. I absolutely adore the sprite work of this game. I mean, look at the town there in the distance. the very idea that they actually do this kind of thing, like this curved town, this was unheard of, by the way, at this point in time. You didn't have something like, I mean, this sounds so simple, but the fact that the town kind of curves around like this, and then curves up like this, to make this kind of circular town-looking thing, was new. Before this, towns were all blocky, you know, X style, north, south, east, west, and that was it. So this also helps to give Chrono Trigger a distinct look to itself, rather than actually adhering to the standard appearance styles that both Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy had adhered to up until this point in time. So that's why it gets the graphics plus. I'll talk about the story thing in a little bit. Don't let me forget about the en medias res thing. That is actually really important. The birds randomly flying overhead, the clouds. This game is so wonderfully atmospheric. Here's another thing that some people didn't know you could do. Do you know you can actually enter Zenon Bridge in the present and see all these people who are like, hey, and each one of them are like talking about going to the fair from the southern continent. Yeah! Woo! We're gonna go see the fair, and here's the kids who are like, yay! We're going to the fair, this is great, and I'm opening a stall. Be sure to buy my stuff at the fair. You know, I'm on my way to the fair, you know, etc., etc., etc. There's a bunch of people here, they repeat a bit. Oh god, you can get stuck in them! Just a nice little thing that, again, I didn't discover until several times playing through this game. And, now, let's talk about something that I don't think deserves a minus, but is definitely not getting a plus. Just like virtually every other game I was talking about, especially when it came to FF6, you have to interpret certain sections of this game. Now, if you're not paying attention, the overworld map in Chrono Trigger is actually really small, especially compared to most standard FFs. This world map is tiny. Okay, I'm just going to demonstrate here. You ready? We're going to actually count this. Okay. We're going to count this out. Where's my timer? There it is, right there. I've been talking for 45 minutes. Okay, so this is basically the northernmost point I can reach on land right here, this exact square. I could actually go a little bit more further north if I went to the castle, but for the purpose of this, we'll just go here. Okay, ready? We're going to count it out as soon as it hits 0, and I'll count out I have a timer in the background, so it'll count the seconds in 5 more seconds. Here, 3, 2, 1. Okay, go. We are now going to cross 2 continents. Note that this isn't running. I mean, there is no running on the overworld map. This is just normal speed. And we're going to go to the very southernmost point we can get on the southern continent, which is right here. That took 18 seconds. 18 seconds to cross 2 continents on foot. Yeah, so the world map, like I said, is really tiny. I am, however, not going to make that as a negative for 3 reasons. Number 1 is what I was just about to talk to. You have to interpret. All of this is part of a kingdom. All of this up here is part of a kingdom. You know, this is all the kingdom of Guardia. And it's supposed to be more than just a tiny town of like 5 buildings and a single castle, which is relatively small. You know, obviously, and again, using the FF6 thing, these are supposed to be nations, not towns, right? That's also true with the Mystics on the east, and I forget the name of it, but the other place in the far southeast, and so forth and so on. This is true for every area in, in the world. Ugh. I don't know, oh dang it. I'm not the one who decides what I review. He shows off. Hey DJ Moore, what's up? So that's the first reason that it's kind of a positive and kind of a negative, is because, you know, you have to interpret it as nations rather than towns. The second reason is it fits the style of Chrono Trigger. Like I said, Chrono Trigger is a short, tightly contained game. If you were to take this game and hold it up, there is literally not a single bit of fat in this entire game. Now I know what you're going to say, well, what about Ozzy? And then I just kind of look at you weird. Seriously though, there is no fluff. There is no excess. There is no padding, is actually the term I like to use most often. Padding and grind both kind of go hand in hand. And as I already mentioned, there is no required grind in this entire game. And there is no padding in this game. Literally all of the content is very tightly focused, has lots to do, and the story keeps pacing beautifully. So having such a tight focus and such a small revolving story, it makes sense the overworld wouldn't be too large, because it doesn't need to be large. There's no reason to make it larger. In all honesty, it wouldn't surprise me if they originally put together the idea for the overworld map and then put it in the game and were like, you know, this is just too big. We don't really need it to be this big. All it's doing is making it take longer to get from point A to point B. Why don't we shrink it? And this is the third point, which both Luslens and Urs Gaming has both pointed out. There is more than one overworld map. In actual fact, there are 5, I want to say. 65 million, 12,000, 600, 1,000, 2,300. So yeah, 5 overworld maps. God, I keep dropping this controller. So that helps stretch it out too, for basically the obvious reason. For all intents and purposes, there are, just multiply this area by 5. Oh no, 6, I was right, there are 6. Multiply this area by 6, and there you go, you will actually have the actual size of the overworld. Add to that the fact that there are no random encounters on the overworld. That actually ties into it as well. I guarantee you this overworld and all the other overworlds would not feel as small as they are if there were random encounters. If it's like da, 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 bzz, and then I have to fight something. Do, 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 do. Okay, then we go south. Bzz, do, 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 do. Okay, it's okay. I have the Berserker equipped. Oh, another encounter. Hang on, gotta fight this thing. You gain 30 G. Okay, move on a bit. Oh, another encounter. I'm not gonna go the whole way, but you get the idea. If there were random encounters in the overworld map would feel larger. In a bad way, though. It would feel like unnecessary grind and padding, so I'm glad they didn't do that. So, yeah. Awesomeness, as they say. Now, let's talk about this. So this is actually the tutorial house, equivalent of the tutorial house in FF6. I'm going to be referencing FF6 a lot, by the way. Part of the reason for that is because, duh. The second reason for that is, again, a lot of the assets, art assets, sound assets, were shared between the two games. These two games were being developed at the same time, in many cases by the same people. So they shared a lot of the same team and crew and idea and whatnot, so there's plenty of additional things to talk about with regard to both. Oh yeah, that reminds me, this is going to be another gameplay plus. You ready for this? I can move around while dialogue is on the screen. This was a very new idea at the time. So yeah, tutorial room, pretty much all optional. Oh yeah, that's one other thing. I'm not going to give a plus for this. I'm giving a plus for the move around thing, but you can do this. If you feel like the text should be up on top or bottom below, you can do that. It's a nice little feature. So, and it's like, hey, what's look? This is this thing you can do. Oh, excuse me. Wah, yawn. Yeah, okay, so blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's a new thing, tutorial-wise. Yeah, Pokemon didn't implement that till really recently. Like I said, yes, this is the DS version, can't you tell? Is this the one? I think this is the one. No, is this it? Okay, here we go. This should be it. Maybe? No? Hang on, I forget which one of these is it, so give me just a moment. Note that they actually bothered to go back here and rewrite several of the tutorials for the DS version, because a lot of the way the game works is a little different in the DS version. Oh, I already talked to him. Oh yeah, you can advance text faster, as I was just doing. Oh shoot, oh whatever, here's... stretch. Now, I'm playing the rare SNES version that plays in 2 screens simultaneously, which is actually really hard to get done, because you had to have a second TV, and I don't know about you, but having a second TV was kind of unheard of back then. There we go. Okay, here we go. So this right here is going to get another plus to the gameplay. This, I've failed at describing this other than simply by saying positional combat. In other words, let's say I want to do an AoE. If I target the guy up top, it hits those 2 guys. If I target the guy in the middle, it hits all 3. Now if you have the wait mode on, the enemies will actually roam around. They'll actually be like, wander, 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 wander. And so occasionally you'll wait a few seconds until the, and 2 enemies get closer to each other, and then you immediately like, okay, quick, go, and hit the attack, so you can get as many of them in that attack as possible. They don't just do standard AoEs, though. They also do lines attacks, like this. There's actually 2 types of line attacks. One is the line in a direction. One is a line up to and including the finest part of this point. And he's demonstrating all these right here, which is what I'm see like that right there. There's also ones that do a vertical, or excuse me, a horizontal across the screen, like Falcon Hit is a good example of that kind of thing. And yeah, so there's a lot of positional awesome you can do in here. In fact, the game I tend to describe it as most is Final Fantasy Tactics, where a lot of your attacks in that game, and especially the special attacks, will hit a certain chunk of the terrain or hit certain chunks of the terrain around you, that kind of a thing. Except it does it in this format instead of having the tile-based. Because of the fact that the gameplay was built in several ways off of the action RPG format, which I've talked about before, the positioning thing required a whole new system specifically to be like, hey, where is this guy right now? So their hitbox will actually roam around here. Let's go up here though. Let's kind of try and demonstrate this as best as I can. So let's say I'm fighting an enemy, and I'm right here, and the enemy is like zoom, and he's zooming by me like this. I can only hit him based on where his specific hitbox is, which, let's just say for the sake of argument, I don't actually know where it is on this guy, but let's just say it's at his feet right there, right? So I can only hit his feet. And the game tracks that by pixel, not by tile. And so if he's moving around, I have to wait until his pixel moves in range, and it'll be able to calculate that based on a simple formula of my position versus his, as opposed to he's within a certain tile of me. So it's like a simultaneously more precise and more, for lack of a better term, fluid version of the Final Fantasy Tactics tile system for combat. Did I already add the gameplay plus for everything I'm talking about right now? Javan, don't lie. Okay, so next thing. I think this probably gets a story plus. I don't think we're going to have as many story pluses as FF6, but we're going to have quite a few, let me tell you. There we go. Add that there. So here's the story plus. You ready for this? Everything, well, I shouldn't say everything, a large number of the things we do in this fair seem like just simple fun. It's just random, hey, what's going on? And yet, at 2 points in the game, and I mean 2 separate major plot points in the game, the events of this fair factor in a major way. I'm not even talking about the ending. Oh, you really, Javan? Oh, you are so weird sometimes. So, for example, hang on. Let's bet on Steel Runner. Now, this is funny. You can just wager on them to go around, right? Well, some people don't know you can actually affect the outcome of the race a little bit. If you run into them, like I'm doing right now, they will slow down slightly. Now, you can slow down your own guy, too, so I'm trying not to do that here. So you can kind of, no, come back, Cadillac. Nobody likes you. Nobody likes you. Ah, damn it. Hey, Casual. Oh, absolutely, Casual. Let me just play Chrono Cross right here. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Okay, so hang on. So you can talk to this guy, and he'll say, Green Ambler. Oh, okay, well, we'll vote for the Green Ambler. Green Ambler. All right. I'm going to stand right here to block these two immediately. No, go, Green Ambler. Go. Okay, screw you, Cadillac. Screw you, Steel Runner. Screw you, Soldier Guy. No, come back, come back. See, I don't know if you can really tell, but especially if you've done this a few trillion times like I have, you can tell after a while how much you're affecting it. Notice Green Ambler is dead last, by the way. Thanks, old man. Anyways, you get points for doing this. You get now, one of the things they do pretty well is there's tons and tons and tons of hints about what's going to come up next, or what you should do, or where A is or B is. There are very few. Whoa, yawn! There are very few NPCs in this game who are not worth talking to. There are a few that are not worth talking to, but the vast majority of them are worth talking to. They say something either gameplay-wise, or side quest-wise, or lore-wise, or setting-wise, or character-wise, or whatever. Like, people like this, even him just saying enjoy the festivities, points out that the Guardia has been established for 1,000 years. Ergo, also giving you the idea that the Kingdom of Guardia established the current, calendar, the current calendar that's being used, and indeed will be used throughout the rest of the game. In other words, year 0 was the foundation of the Kingdom of Guardia, 1,000 years ago, right? And this person's like, hey, Luke has made another crazy invention with her father. Hope it doesn't blow up like last one. In that one line of dialogue, we get a surprising amount of exposition about Luca, her father, and the way that they function. This is all woven beautifully into the dialogue. In fact, I think I'm going to go and give another plus to the story just for how they weave things into the narrative and for the fact that the NPCs are not wasted. Whoops, whoops. There we go. And like this woman up here, for example, she's like, oh, we've been through a lot, like the war against the Fiend Lord 400 years ago. That would be Magus, by the way. There was a big war. Mom said we wouldn't be having a fair if we had lost, you know, blah, 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 blah. This woman is even a surprising thing. She's like, hey, come into the Tentorus, spend your silver points here. Now, in the English version, she just said, spend your insert number here, silver points here. So that's how you could check how many silver points you have. In this one, they make it more obvious. Oh, excuse me. She specifically says, let me check how many points you have, right? I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb here and ask a question that I feel a few people will say yes to. How many of you out there spent an inordinate amount of time at the fair playing the games and racking up the silver points just for fun? And I am somewhat embarrassedly raising my hand right now. So like I said, just about everything you do here you're going to be judged for. Again, I'll talk about that and why that's awesome in a minute. This is kind of neat, though. If you just pause here, she just walks around you. Now, this seems kind of neat. You know, that's like, hey, you know, they've got that code in there. But the significance of this is quietly subtle. I love this. In other words, no matter what you do, Marl will never bump into you. Ever. You have to bump into her. Bunk. Like that. And yeah, I used to bet on the races a lot. I shouldn't say bet, you just pick. So, do you talk to Marl first, or do you talk to the pendant? Again, a lot of this is so ingenious because it's trying to teach you to treat this like a character rather than a game. What are you going to do first? Look at the shiny thing or talk to the NPC who's wandering around? God, why am I yawning so much today? Oh, scratch. And the, well, let's just say there's several of these. I'll talk about each of these as we go, but we want to talk to her first. And then we'll talk to the pendant, you know, grab the pendant. Here you go, ma'am. Nadia. I like who here prefers Marl or Nadia? I'm just curious. You know, which one do you prefer, in other words? Yeah, by the way, Lean's bell rings when they meet. For those of you not catching that, several people at several points in the time say that whoever hears Lean's bell ring will lead interesting lives. Yeah, I prefer the name Marl, by the way. I've personally liked the theory that Nadia's middle name is Marl. We'll see, chatter. We'll see. So now we have Marl. Yay! Hey, this is a free heal, and it's infinite. Sweet! Of course I'm going to go for this. Of course I'm going to eat this, even though it's this old man's lunch that... Now this is even worse in the DS version, by the way, because his wife made that lunch for him, and it is the highlight of his day and gives him that oomph when he's feeling worn down. In other words, they're kind of, you know, emphasizing that things are... You would be a bastard for eating that lunch. That wasn't true in the English version. In the English version, it was just like, hey, you know, that's my lunch, and that's the extent of it. Whoops. Then there's the cat. Now, this is a bugged one. I've pointed this out before. If you talk to her before getting the cat, it actually flags the cat as screwed up. Or it flags you as being an evil bastard in this one, and scaring away the cat. I don't even know if that's fixed in the DS version, but I just wanted to do that the proper way anyways. So yeah, my stuff, in response to Shuragai's question, my Twitch stuff is being archived. I have been archiving it manually. Each each of these streams that's been happening for the last week. They are not going to be going live until the tour stuff is finished going live and the 4-Job Fiesta has gone live. Now let's see if I can do this. I haven't done this in forever. I couldn't even do this during the marathon, if you remember, so here we go. Ah, jeez. Yeah, still can't do that one. I am not a Mega Man player, you can tell. So then there's this area here. Nothing really fascinating here, except for the fact that this is, whoops. A tiny, tiny hint about the past. Come on, there we go. Prehistoric rhythm. Well, I thought one of them, okay, in the English version, one of them is like, this song has been handed down for many generations, you know, that kind of thing. Also, I like the food that's on the table here. It reminds me a lot of fair food. In other words, colorful, lots of sugar, and really, really bad for you. I look at those personally, and I think they're pies and maybe some vats of like taffy or something like that. You know, that's just how I look at that. Feel free to insert your own there. This whole area in general is very colorful, and again, wonderful sprite work, wonderful animated sprite work. You see that flag there that's just billowing in the wind. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love the sprite work on this game. This game is so damn good. And then we, okay, so I did that. Let's go ahead and fight our good friend, Gato. We're not, okay, for those of you who are somehow unaware of this, I did a level 1 task of this game, where Chrono beats the game at level 1, right? Hey Baneth, welcome back. That's basically the last real time I've put my heart and soul into this game, and so in my mind, most of the strategies I did then are still in my mind. So I'm like, I gotta fake Gato, and then I pause, I'm like, wait, no I can't, I don't want the experience! And so I had to like mentally pause and shift gears, be like, no, I am not doing a level 1 run. By the way, under certain ways, if you sing this song, it'll actually sync up with the rhythm of the actual tune, which I think is kind of cool. Ooh, a marshmallow peep golem. We'll call it a marbit. I like the song. What do you want from me? However, there's a lore tidbit here. You ready for this lore tidbit? This is a robot. Seriously, think about this for a moment. This is a freaking robot that can fight and talk in medieval era. This is an era of people who have things like swords and armor, and they have a freaking robot. Now, this is important for two very, very important reasons. One, it really emphasizes just how much of a genius and how ahead of her time Luca really is. I mean, just way, way ahead of her time by a stupid amount of ridiculousness. Tesla is looking at Luca and saying, damn, I wish I had that brain. Actually, I have a comment on that, Leslie. Damn it, he wasn't far enough away. Go away. There, when he's far enough away, he can't counterattack, so I can be like, whatcha? Oh yeah, by the way, the the robot is also using a microphone. Now I gotta pay attention for a couple of things to see if I am correct about something. We'll see, though. So I'm pretty low in health. I better eat the old man's lunch that his wife packed. Specifically for him, because I'm a bastard. Also known as a standard RPG player. Hey, what's up, Melkor? What's up? You're probably not an important NPC for the story. No. I will not convince her to try and sell her pendant. Sorry. Yeah, let's leave town real quick. Come on, Marl. So, let's see here. We'll see, Cashel. We'll see. Okay. I suppose it is now debatable. See, I was going to postulate a theory, but as I'm looking around, I'm seeing that it's not quite correct. Disproving my own theory here. What we have here is a rather unusual mix of technology. They have things like radios, refrigerators, and stoves, but not guns or even explosives in general. So I suppose Luca isn't quite as advanced as I gave her credit for. She's still ridiculously advanced, just not as advanced. Look at this place. We'll go and get a little bit of additional lore here while we're here. Hey, look at this. It's Luca's mother. Why is she sitting down? Oh, I'm sure it's not important. Sure, Chatter. They are things. There you go, there's your rumination. See what else we got technology-wise. So they still use lanterns and whatnot, but they do also have access to clocks. And yes, Luca has a gun, of course, but that's just proving my original point. And you know, there's a fridge right there. Oh, here, let's have Marl meet my mother. Like I said, radio right there. Typewriters are another thing that are in this game, in 1080, I should say. And yeah, they do have steam-powered ships too, because those are very clearly not sailing ships right there. You can actually, this is so pointless. You could get in here, get a ticket, and take the ferry down here. It actually takes longer to take the ferry in order to get down to this other town, Pur, I want to say. No, I have not, Cheddar. And then it does literally just walk down here. It's just there for, hey, what's up? You know, that's like the only purpose it exists in, or exists for, excuse me. Oh yeah, I forgot to show this off. Sorry. Let's go to the mayor. He's a bastard. Hey, my dad. My dad loves more money than he loves money more than he loves me. Daddy's not greedy, is he? Sniffle, sniffle. No, he's not greedy. Can I have your shelter? Thanks, kid. Bye. Oh yeah, by the way, I like how the kid's house has swords up on the wall. Or the kid's room, rather. Anyways, right now it is no it isn't, it is 5:10 p.m. where I am. So that's my time zone. EST, in other words, or -5, I want to say, GMT. So okay, enough analyzing the technology. It's kind of a hodgepodge mix, which makes sense given other things that will happen soonish. See, even these people have like a stove and a kitchen, or excuse me, a sink and whatnot. So we did that. Oh, I didn't heal. Right, I knew there was another reason I was going to do this. Efficiency, Arsh, come on. Well, they take turns, Leslin. Hey, Marl, you want to sleep in my bed? For record, it is clear that Luca does in fact have a gun as of now. She does have the access to what is effectively explosive technology, you know, etc., etc., etc. I would just like to really re-emphasize that Luca has access to a singing battle robot. Just seriously. But anyways, what, Joven? Okay, we're gonna go fight a couple more gatos or gato. Well, Samurai Jack, I've been playing Chrono Trigger. Hey, that girl hit me. I better beat up this kid. For those of you who haven't played the SNES version and the DS version basically side by side like I have done, they basically rewrote the combat engine, again, under the hood, in order to smooth it out a lot. So it's one of those things that you wouldn't even notice unless you're really paying attention to it, but they did do a really good job, in my opinion, of, for lack of a better term, smoothing it out. It's not really faster so much as it is, there's less stalls, there's less haltedness, and occasionally on the SNES version it'd be like, you know, a lot of that has been smoothed out. 45, excellent, that's how much I want. So we've done everything now. Now this one I never screwed up on my original playthrough. This is the one I always got not guilty on. Because to me it just made sense to go ahead and wait. Apparently the king has a tomboy daughter. Huh, weird. Wonder what she looks like. You know, Canada Dries are awesome. You should buy Canada Dry. Do it. No, I kid. Canada Dry is actually a pretty, you know, acquired taste. Yeah, exactly, Joven. She says to wait, so I'm like, okay. And I just waited. Now, as I've demonstrated during the task, you can actually skip most of the cutscene that's about to happen here. So, you guys may question my statement that Luca is in fact a genius just because she has the minor achievement of having constructed a singing, battling robot in this particular technological era, and that's fair enough. She's also developed a freaking teleporter. Now, granted, it is a site-to-site teleporter. In other words, you have to have a teleporter at both ends. Excuse me, I'm saying that wrong, aren't I? It's the opposite of site-to-site. Or maybe I am right and I have no idea what I'm talking. Anyways, point being, this is insane that she has made this and that it works. Seriously. Yes, white chocolate with cake batter is something they had at Cold Stone. So, you know. Hey, wait a minute. I want to go fight lavas! Come on! Point-to-point lava? Mechanism to mechanism? I don't know. Anyways, there is a term for this kind of thing. Yeah, it's just a site-to-site teleporter, that's all. And you might be like, well, maybe it doesn't work. Now, one of the things I find interesting, if I could pause to talk about lore for a second. I know that's not what you're here for, to hear me talk about lore. First of all, I want to just give huge praise to the sprite work. I love the design of so much of the technology things that they showcase, especially in 2300 AD. But look at those teleporters right there. That is some astonishingly good sprite work that they did on those. Really makes it look fleshed out, and like you can get the feel of the rusted metal in some cases, and the hard iron, and the copper, and the bronze. It looks like just technology. I love it. Moving on. Luca is constantly talked about by everyone who is not Luca as if her inventions don't work. And yet, one of the most interesting things here is the fact that everything she invents, basically from this point onwards, works. Why is that? Now, I've heard two particular reasons for this. Yeah, I admit the trees are not the best. You can actually see where the sprites are clipping on the right side of the screen there. So, why is that? Why is it that it is only now that she started getting everything working? I guess technically I've heard 3 theories about that. But the first and most common theory I hear is she started getting successes, like with Gato and this teleporter, and that bolstered her confidence. Now that may sound like just like, oh, whoop-de-doo, she's more confident, but do you have any idea how important confidence is to success? Especially at things that are difficult or tasking or require a lot of skill and planning? So that's a very feasible reason. She successfully made a teleporter, successfully made the Gato, successfully made a gun, and was like, hey, it's actually working now. And just kind of kept rolling with it. The momentum kept her going to the point where the next thing she invents is a key to control the time travel she invented by accident. Second theory, is that it's an external thing. In other words, that this is the point in time that is the, for lack of a better term, focal point in history. And it is. I mean, this isn't. 1000 AD is absolutely a focal point in Chrono Trigger's history. And so either Luca or the essence of Lavos or Lavos personally basically started feeding some of these ideas into her brain to the point where she was like, oh, that's how it fits together. Tink, tink, tink. And then it started working. I say that's technically 2 theories because the first theory specifically points to the fact that it being Shala, aka the entity, and the second theory being specifically towards Lavos, because we know that Lavos specifically goes out of his way to guide humanity in a specific direction to be harvested, right? Well, this kind of technological boon would certainly be in line with that sort of thinking, wouldn't it? Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Ah! The wrong button there, sorry. So, which of these is true is up to you. I personally like the confidence idea more. I like the idea that Luca was doing all of this on her own and gained confidence and gained, self-respect and was like, oh, okay, I could just do this. And it started working. It is possible her father was holding her back, too. That is certainly possible. So I also like the idea that nobody wants to try her teleportation device. Be honest, in the modern era, where we have things like 3D printing and wireless internet and drones that can deliver packages, I know those aren't actually employed yet, but they do work. In the modern era, if you were approached at a fair by someone who said, check it out, I've invented a teleporter, would you be volunteering to use it? Because I sure as hell would not. Unless it was someone I knew personally. Unless it was, for example, my best friend. I mention this because this is one of the 3 or 4 things in the game that emphasizes just how close of friends Chrono and Luca really are. Was it a fluke? There's only one way to know. Let's see if all my atoms are still there at the other side, shall we? Yeah, I've seen The Fly, guys. I'm not sure I'd be signing up for that one. Ugh. And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, it works. I like this one, by the way. What does teleport mean? Wow. I like his comment most of all. It worked! Unbelievable! They never did. As I was saying, Luke has done it again, ladies and gentlemen. A thrilling display of science. I'm also reminded of the teleporter in Galaxy Quest. Remember that one? One more time. Making it even 3. That could be, John. That is true, Taito. At least you think it's true. So anyways, yeah, let's talk tomorrow. You don't actually have to do that at all. You can just go straight tomorrow. Now, what's about to happen is incredibly significant. Marl has Shala's pendant on. It has been passed down through generation upon generation upon generation, and she has, we know that there is a significant magical power in that pendant. It is very specifically designed. It is not mere jewelry. And there have been several theories of exactly why the pendant interacts with teleportation to create time travel. At this point in time, given Shala's partial merger with Lavos, I think it's a natural reaction, for lack of a better term to put it. However, one of the other most common theories I hear is that this was an unnatural reaction. In other words, that Shala specifically was aware of this event in her not quite interacting with time way that she is in the whatever it's called, the realm beyond, and therefore reached out to pull Marl through, and this kind of is what caused the cascade effect of the various time portals to open up across the world and across the ages in all of those focal points I mentioned earlier. Which idea you like better is up to you. If you have a third or a fifth or an 18th idea, I am as ever listening. A lot of this story is actually very interpretive because they go out of their way to not bog it down with too much exposition. So a lot of it we don't actually know exactly what's happening. I mean, we know what's happening here. Her pendant, Shala's pendant, is interacting with the teleporter to create a time portal. Okay, we know that. We don't know why. We technically never know why, as I have pointed out. Oops. I have a text message here, which I have to respond to. Ah, shoot. I didn't mean... Okay, I need to rebind those key bindings. This is set up with a weird key binding, so we just lost a little bit of time here. And I'd rather fix that, because I don't actually want to use save slots at all, unless I want to... I guess I could show it off something, but anyways. Where's my input configuration? There it is, control conflict. Okay, here we go. Put this here instead. Hotkey. Here we go. Okay. Tools. Save states. Here we go. I want this to be F1 and F2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. F1, F2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. Fixed. Hey, Bernessa. Which time nexus? Sure you. What are you talking about? Okay, so yeah, let's do the teleporter scene again. Don't worry, I can skip about half of it this time. Watch this. She's like, "Hey, Chrono, go try out the teleporter." Sure thing. Then I talk to Marl. That looked so much fun. I want to try it too. Yes, Cashel, it is. Especially given that there's a lot of hints that Shala has been influencing things from beyond. Most notably that awesome scene, that's an optional scene, that you get after doing the forest quest. Okay, so hang on, I gotta text something really quick here. Oh, no, that's not Melkor, that is Gasper, sure you. He is one of the 3 sages, but it's a different one. Ironically, the Sage of Time ends up in the End of Time. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to get this grocery list across before I lose the chance to get groceries today. And yes, this is where Wesley shows up. No, I kid. There. Alright, so, I noticed nobody else has told me anything other than Javan. So I guess we'll just go with those 2 general theories. But those are just kind of the 2 theories. Either Shala's interfering or it's a natural reaction. I mean, really, I have not heard many alternate theories other than variations of those. Because it is very, very clear that the pendant was key to this. Now, one of the things that is going to be pretty important for the duration and course of this game. By the way, hi Baronessa and Brave, if I didn't say hi to either of you is Chrono as a character. Now I know you're laughing at me because Chrono has exactly one line in the entire game, and it's in an optional ending. So in other words, in canon, Chrono never says a single word. He is a literal silent